Pathfinders of the Dark. Book 1. The Battle of Mars. Episode 5. Chapter 9. The Ship That Asked for Him. The Vigilant Guardian was waiting for him at the inner line, and the first thing Jax learned about her was that the asking had been literal. He had assumed, riding the transport out from the nameless moon, that ships requested pathfinders the way they requested any scarce equipment, a form filed and a queue joined and a long wait for whatever the fleet saw fit to send. He learned otherwise in his first hour aboard, standing at attention in a ready room that smelled of coffee and gun oil, while Captain Lara Stone read his file in front of him without hurry and without apology, the way she did everything. She was not what he had expected. He had expected someone like the fleet instructors, hard and tired and careful around him the way you are careful around something expensive. Stone was none of that. She was a compact woman with dark eyes that did not move quickly because they did not need to, and when she finally set the file down, she looked at him the way the yard foreman at Tasker had looked at a new hull coming in under tow, measuring, already planning the work. 14 months ago, I commanded a corvette called the Halcyon on the outer picket, she said, without preamble. We had no pathfinder. We had the best sensor suite in the squadron and a crew I had trained for 3 years. And when the swarm came, we were a half-second behind on every move we made, beginning to end. 11 of my people got to the pods. I was one of them. She said it flat, the way you say a thing you have decided to be able to say. While I was waiting for a new command, I read every engagement report the fleet would clear me for, looking for the half-second. I found it in exactly one place, a handful of actions, early in the war, where a ship with one of you aboard did things the enemy had ruled impossible. So when they gave me the Guardian, I did not file a request for a pathfinder. I filed a request every week for a year, and when word came down the training pipeline that a candidate had broken the emulator twice in 2 attempts, I stopped requesting a pathfinder and started requesting you. Jax did not know what to say to that, so he said the true thing. It was once in 2 attempts, Captain. The first time it beat me. Something moved at the corner of her mouth, not quite a smile. Good, she said. I have no use for a man who rounds up. She stood and came around the desk and stopped in front of him, and for a moment the command went out of her voice and something older and plainer was in it. I am going to tell you the 2 things I tell you now and never again. The first is that I know what using that thing costs you. I have read the medical annexes the fleet does not advertise. I will spend you, because that is what war is, and that is what we are both for. But I will never spend you carelessly, and I will never pretend the spending is free. The second is this. On my ship, you are not a talisman. You are not an oracle, and you are not a curiosity. You are a watchstander with a rating and a duty station and a bunk, and you will stand your watches and drill with the damage parties and eat in the mess with everyone else. Because the day this crew starts treating you like a god is the day they stop thinking for themselves, and I need every mind on this ship doing its own thinking. Understood? Understood, Captain. Then, welcome aboard, mechanic. She had already turned back to her work. They told me that is what they call you. It is a good name. Try to live down to it. The crew was harder than the captain. Word of what he was had run through the ship before his boots did, and for the first weeks he moved through the Guardian inside a small pocket of careful silence. Conversations paused when he entered a compartment and resumed, differently, when he left. Men and women who feared nothing would glance at his temple, where the lens sat cool and dormant, and then glance away. He knew the look. He had grown up under it. He had crossed half a solar system, and it had been waiting for him at the airlock. It was Torres who broke the pocket. Torres ran the sensor suite, a long-limbed man with a quick mouth and an unhurried way of sprawling across his station that drove the executive officer to quiet despair. And in Jax's second week, he dropped into the seat across from him in the mess, uninvited, exactly the way Cass had once done, and studied Jax over a tray of reconstituted noodles. "So here is my problem," Torres said. "Everybody on this ship is afraid of you, and nobody can tell me why. Best I can get is that you see things before they happen. And I have been sitting at a sensor board for 2 years seeing things before they happen. That is the whole job. Light gets to me before it gets to anybody else. Nobody is afraid of me." He pointed his fork at Jax. "So either you're much better at it than I am, in which case I want to know your settings, or everybody on this ship is an idiot, in which case I want to be able to say so with confidence. Which is it?" Jax looked at him for a moment. "Both," he said. Torres laughed, a short bark that turned heads, and that was the end of the pocket of silence, because fear is hard to maintain about a man the sensor chief is loudly losing card games to 3 nights a week. The third one came quieter and mattered more. Lieutenant Reyes had the navigation board, and she was the kind of officer the fleet built its long retreats around, precise, unflappable, dry as vacuum, and she did not glance at Jax's temple ever, not once, and at first he thought it was discipline. Then one evening, 3 weeks in, she stopped beside his station at the end of a watch, and instead of passing on, she stood there a moment and said, "My family is from Halvern Station, the outer ring." She said it the way Stone had said the Halcyon, flat, decided. "When the evacuation order came, my mother got my daughter onto the 3rd Pilgrim hauler out, and the hauler behind theirs did not make it. And the reason theirs did is that there was a ship in the screen that day that kept being where the enemy had decided it could not be. I found out later what was aboard her." She looked at him then, and there was nothing in her face of the careful glance, nothing of the fear. "So, the rest of them will come around, or they will not. But you will not get the look from me. I owe the looks opposite, whatever that is." She had a way, after that, of making him part of the furniture of the ship, which he understood was a deliberate kindness. She conscripted him into the navigation department's standing card game. She corrected his terrible spacer's slang in front of people, which made them laugh, which made him a man who could be laughed at, which made him crew. And taped to the lower corner of her navigation console, where regulation said nothing could be taped, there was a child's drawing, renewed every few months when the mail caught up with the ship, and Jax learned without ever quite being told that the artist was 8 years old, that her name was Maya, that she lived now on a converted colony hauler called Pilgrim 3 in the great slow flotilla behind the line, and that every drawing was some version of the same subject, a gray warship with too many guns and a yellow sun, and underneath, in the careful, enormous letters of a child who has just gotten the hang of them, "The ship that keeps Mama safe." "She thinks I steer it with a wheel," Reyes said once, catching him looking. "Like a boat in a story. I have decided not to correct her until she is at least 10. Jax thought of Theo at 6, crying against his chest on a wet strand, alive. He did not say anything, but he understood, standing at the navigation board, with the drawing at the corner of his vision, that the war had just gotten smaller for him, and heavier, the way it does when the things behind the lines stop being numbers. Chapter 10. The Inner Line. The first time the Guardian fought with Jax aboard, it was a small thing, as the war measured things, and it changed the ship forever. A Varithra raider element, 3 hulls, came down on a convoy the Guardian was escorting sunward, and they came the way they always came, sudden and seamless, and a half-second ahead. Except this time, they were not ahead. Jax stood at the station they had built for him beside the tactical display, with the lens warm against his temple for the first time in anger, and the branching opened in front of him, and he heard his own voice come out level and certain in a way that surprised even him. "They will commit to the lead freighter in 20 seconds. Helm, fall off 2 points, and let them believe we are slow. There was one heartbeat of silence on the bridge, the heartbeat in which a crew decides what it believes. Stone did not let it stretch. "Do it," she said, and the helm did it. And 20 seconds later, the raiders committed to the lead freighter exactly as the future had pressed through the cloth, and the Guardian was not where the swarm had agreed she would be. She was on their flank with a full broadside, and 2 of the 3 hulls died in the first exchange, and the third ran for the dark with the Guardian's missiles chasing it. The convoy got through whole. Nobody aboard had ever brought a convoy through whole. Jax spent that night with a nosebleed and a white blade behind his eyes and the old, familiar shaking in his hands, sitting on the deck of his tiny cabin with his back against the bunk, paying. And in the morning, he learned what the price had bought, because the pocket of careful silence was gone from the whole ship at once, replaced by something he had never felt directed at him in his life. Not fear, not even the reverence that would come later, and that he never learned to like. Something simpler. He walked into the mess, and the gunnery chief, a broad, slow-moving woman named Okafor who ran Battery 2 and had not said 5 words to him in a month, looked up from her tray and said, "Weather report," and the whole compartment laughed, and a space was made at the gunnery table, and that was that. He was the weather report. You did not fear the weather report. You read it, and you trusted it, and you got your people under cover. The 2 years that followed had a shape that Jax only saw afterward, the way you only see a tide from the cliff. There were engagements, 11 of them that counted, raids and screens, and one long, terrible running fight off the Phobos yards that cost the Guardian 19 crew and taught Jax the limits of the gift all over again, because he had called every threat he could see, and the futures had still come too thick to choose among. And, afterward, he had stood in the hangar bay at the memorial muster and learned that the crew did not blame him, which was somehow worse than if they had. Stone found him after that one, in the dark of the observation blister where he had gone to be alone with the arithmetic. "You are doing the thing," she said. "The thing where you count the ones you did not save against the ones you did, and let the first number erase the second." She stood beside him and looked out at the stars, and did not look at him at all, which made it possible to listen. "I lost the Halcyon with no Pathfinder aboard, and I have run the engagement 1,000 times since with you at the rail. And you know what I find? I find 11 survivors instead of none, or 30, or 2. I never find everyone. There is no version of this war where anyone saves everyone." She was quiet a moment. 19 names on that bulkhead tonight. There were 240 souls on this ship this morning, mechanic. Do that arithmetic, too. You do not get to keep only the ledger that condemns you. And between the engagements, there was the life, which was the part no one had told him a warship contained. The card games in navigation that Reyes ran like a small, ruthless casino. Torres's contraband flask, produced on the bad nights with ceremony, 1 sip each, to the ones we could not save, and the ones we still might. A toast he had started after Phobos and never explained and never needed to. Okafor's gun crews adopting Jax outright, demanding the weather report before every drill, teaching him the gunnery deck's profane private language until he could walk the length of Battery 2 in the dark and name every loader at their station. Maya's drawings changing with the mail, the gray warship acquiring more and more guns as the war news worsened, as if a child 200 million kilometers away were up-armoring the ship herself with crayon, doing her part. He wrote to Theo twice and deleted both letters, because everything true was classified and everything else was a lie, and he had had enough of keeping things close to last a lifetime. He told himself there would be time after. Everyone aboard told themselves something like that. In the last month, the shape of the war changed, and everyone felt it before anyone said it. The raids stopped. The outer pickets went quiet one by one, not destroyed, withdrawn from, as if the enemy had lost interest in the small hunting. Torres sat at his board through the long watches and read the dark like a man reading a coastline before a storm, and what he read was massing, and what command sent back when the Guardian reported it was a single word: hold. On the last night, the night before the long-range arrays lit up with more contacts than they had been built to count, Jax came off watch and found Reyes at the navigation board long after her relief, not working, just standing, with her fingertips resting on the corner of the console where the newest drawing was taped. This one had something the others had not. Beside the gray warship with its forest of crayon guns, small and round and smiling, the artist had added a stick figure with a scribble of dark hair standing on top of the hull as if on a hill. "She put me on the outside of the ship," Reyes said. "I have decided not to explain hull breaches until she is at least 12. She said it, dry as ever, and then she was quiet, and the dryness went out of her, and for the only time in 2 years she let him see what was under it. "They are coming this time, Jax. The real weight of them. Torres knows it. The captain knows it. The dark out there is thick with it." Her fingertips stayed on the drawing. "I am not afraid of dying. I made my peace with that the day I took the commission. But that hauler is 40,000 kilometers behind this line, and the line is us, and I find I am very afraid of the line breaking. So tomorrow, when it starts, I need the weather report to do me a favor. Name it." "Be wrong about nothing," she said, and smiled to make it half a joke. And it was not a joke at all, and they both knew it. "Good night, mechanic." He stood alone at the navigation board for a while after she had gone, looking at the gray ship with its impossible guns and its smiling stick figure standing unafraid on the hull. The ship that keeps Mama safe. In letters the artist had pressed so hard the crayon had snapped, you could see where the line went suddenly thin. Then he went to his cabin and lay in the dark and did not sleep. And out past the orbit of Mars, the future gathered itself, vast and patient and one. And at some hour of the night, the alarms began. Episode 6 arrives next week. Opening salvos.